Okay, did everybody get a notification that we're recording? Yes? Okay, great, because I didn't see it, so I'm usually on the other end of that. Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for the Student Basic Needs Community of Practice meeting. I'm Lily Mass-McKinley, the Executive Director of the Kentucky Student Success Collaborative, and I am really excited for this conversation. I know you all are in the thick of it right now with your semesters wrapping up, with your students getting ready for commencement, graduation, and just all the fun things, all the wonderful honors events and award dinners and all of those just final exams, but we're not really going to talk about that. But your students are getting ready to go. So this is a really a busy time for you, and I just really appreciate you all being here today. I am going to go ahead and share screen. Okay. I'll do that in a minute, man. Okay, so let's see. We have a great agenda today. We are going to do a quick refresher of just our basic needs work that we have going on. We're going to hear from Carrie Welton with the Institute for College Access and Success. If you were able to join us for the Student Success Summit, she was our leader of our basic needs pathway and was really able to share some great insights and information about how campuses can maximize access to public benefits and other supports for students. She's going to share a quick refresher of that presentation just to help set the stage. And then we have a really wonderful community partner panel comprised of some great community leaders from the Family Scholar House, Sarah Brady, Marissa Sangayo with the Department for Community-Based Services, and Jessica Klein with the Center for Economic Policy, also representing the Thrive KY Coalition, of a really wonderful group of nonprofit organizations working together to support the basic needs of all Kentuckians. Then we will certainly have time for great discussion with your peers. And then I'll give you a quick heads up of the next steps for our community of practice. Okay, so just the kind of basics of what are we coming together to do? What is the purpose of our meeting? And it's really, everybody can have a unique kind of what's in it for me as they come into this space, but really we'd love to just be able to share what's going on your respective campuses. Where are your wins? Where are your challenges? To really build our network, to connect with folks from other campuses so we can see what's happening at U of L or Murray or Southeast, and really get a sense of who might be in our network that we can go to if we have additional questions or want to just talk more and brainstorm. And then of course, like always with the goal to improve our practice, to strengthen those supports for students. So our work in basic needs has really been two-pronged as we've moved forward. The first objective of our work is really to increase access to basic needs supports for currently enrolled students. And so that is really the focus of this group as we come together and think about each of the roles that we play and how we can better support our students. The other and equally important element of this work is to increase access to post-secondary education for individuals who are receiving state supports. And post-secondary education is a pathway to economic mobility and financial self-sufficiency. And so there is some really great work and movement along that, that important priority as well. So just to dive a little bit deeper into objective number one, increasing access to student basic needs supports, we have a group that has been convening since January. It's called the Student Basic Needs Action Network. And it's really just a representative group of diverse stakeholders across the state. And they have been trying to identify what are the priorities, the recommendations, and really some of the implementation components that we really need to leverage in order to achieve these two really big objectives. And there are some emerging priorities for increasing access to basic needs support that hopefully in the discussion rooms, y'all can maybe talk a little bit about that, reflect on that, and see how does this either reinforce, and support your own priorities on your campuses, or if there's something else that's missing, we'd love to hear. So those elements just quickly. One is how do we know that our students may need some additional support or are eligible for additional support before they reach a crisis, a point of crisis? And so kind of thinking about how can we help with some eligibility screening or just basic needs screening to our students so we can proactively support them. Two, it's become clear that, our campus staff and faculty, the whole network and ecosystem that supports our students could benefit from some increased knowledge and information, some training or professional development around the opportunities, the community resources, and just the whole work around supporting student basic needs. We have, through our faculty researchers, really kind of identified a gap in communication where students are not aware of resources that exist to them, or the websites that are kind of sharing what opportunities and resources exist to support students are not always up to date or accurate. So thinking about how can we strengthen the communications that we're providing to students and the web resources that they're able to find and discover. A huge theme, and even in our last community of practice meeting, was around capacity on our campuses to be able to do this intensive one-on-one customized individualized work to really support students, and not just to give them a band-aid fix of here's a small grant to fix, for that car repair, but thinking more about the longer term or the ongoing coaching and support that students may need so that they don't end up back in a similar situation down the road. So that capacity is a very important priority. We've talked a little bit about data and how it's a little bit elusive right now. We don't have great metrics that are common across our campuses to talk about our students that have basic needs and security, or how the impact, what is the impact of the programs and resources that we're providing on their ultimate student success. So that is an opportunity, I think, to standardize or to get some common ground there. And then finally, from the state perspective, how can we look at our plans that we have around various public benefit programs and look for opportunities to increase flexibilities for students? And so really thinking about those plans from the student's perspective and how different tweaks to our current plans could help improve that access. So those were the emerging priorities, and welcome your thoughts and feedback in those discussion groups as we move forward. So now I'm going to turn it over. I'm sorry, Gary. We have a little bit of engagement here real quick. So everybody, we did this in the last meeting. I really love the engagement opportunity through Mentimeter. Would love if you could go to menti.com, either on your computer or on your phone. And then when you type in the code, you will be able to put in your institution name, your name and role, institution, whatever you would like to share with the group. This is just great so that we can really see who all's in the room with us. And code at the top, 341411868. And if you're not a huge fan of Mentimeter, you can always put your thoughts in the chat. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Okay. EKU, Bluegrass, UVal, Southeast, Bellarmine, UI Policy, UK, Gateway Community College, and the Scholar House, Relis Company, welcome Carla, KCPCS, Ready to Work Coordinator at Owensboro, Adult Ed, fantastic, what a great group. West Kentucky, Maysville, my state. Who else are we missing? Everybody get a chance? Oh, we got some more in the chat. Everybody counts. Southeast, UK, Kentucky State, Owensboro, Bluegrass. All right, wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for being here. Excited about this, Ed, You're not an official representative of Murray State, but you're an interested party from math and statistics. Excellent. Wow, that is awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Okay, so I just have two questions, a little bit more about your work. And specifically, I'm interested, this is the end of the year, we're wrapping up here. What would you say has been your biggest win this year around your student basic needs efforts? And on your, your Menti, if you're online, your Menti should go to the next question. Food pantry development. Expanding our student pantry. Including a statewide unmet financial need research project. Yes. Chris, is that you? We opened the clothing closet. All right, we just had a day of giving. We received 2,000 gifts to student basic needs. Oh, $2,000 in gifts. That's amazing. Meetings with students. SNAP specialists coming to campus in May. It's a great partnership. So gaining more child care center partners to help our parenting students. I'd love to hear more about that. Directing students for financial assistance. The students starting to re-engage after the pandemic. Attending a monthly partnership meeting at the Community Action Agency. Excellent. Fortunate to have DCBS increase food benefit. Yes. Expanding food pantry services and emergency need services. Excellent. Educating on the depth of services we provide across the state to educational institutions and their students. Thank you. Knowing and understanding more of students' needs and hearing recommendations from other states on how the state agency can assist. These are great wins and a lot of really positive energy with this work. That's really great. Thank you. Running a resource fair in the fall. All right, let's go on. So now the other flip side of that, we all have boulders that we're trying to push up the hill. I'm interested to know, like, kind of what is that persistent challenge that maybe you're still working on? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? What is the big boulder for you? Leadership buy-in for a basic needs coordinator. Capacity, I hear you. Getting enough support. Is that the capacity statement? Housing needs during breaks for students. Yes. Supreme Court. That's a boulder already. Dwindling state KTAP population. Staffing capacity. SNAP access. Getting students connected with resources early on. Transportation barriers, finding flexibilities in SNAP regulations and policy for student eligibility, identifying students with unmet financial need before they stop out or drop out, staffing capacity, students using the resources that they have available, engagement and connection. The challenge of reaching online students. Thank you for bringing that up. Anything in the court, I just read Supreme Court. Everything in the chat here. Keeping in touch with the students that have the most needs, needed resources in our area. Childcare remains a huge issue. How do we communicate to get students' attention? Yep, reach and engage students. Yep, convincing students college is worth it when they're fighting for their lives as youth. A lot of priorities. Student engagement, staffing support. Connecting students with resources and do they follow up? kind of a case management tracking challenge there for sure. How do you know that the students are connected with something? Housing instability among students and students to technology, engaging online students. Fantastic. Well, I think that there's a lot of common things in common here related to some of our challenges that we're facing. And so hopefully as we get into our breakout rooms, folks, if you have ideas or strategies that have worked or that you're trying out to touch on any of these big issues, please don't hesitate to share with your colleagues. Okay, so now I am going to turn it over to our amazing colleague, Carrie Welton, with the Institute for College Access and Success. And this is a snippet of her presentation. She was with us at the Student Success Summit. I'm going to turn it over to Carrie.
Thanks a lot, Lily. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Hey, everybody. Great to be here and see some familiar faces. You can go ahead to the next slide. Thank you, Lily. So one of the things that we like to do when we're talking about the need for student basic support is set a little bit of context for what do we mean when we're talking about poverty in this country. And in Kentucky specifically, we see a statewide rate of about 16.5%. And obviously, unsurprising to, I'm sure, all of you here, much higher pockets across the state, and a national rate of about 11.5%. Next slide, please. So, but what does that mean for somebody to live in poverty? And the reason that I like to flesh this out a bit is because poverty levels affect benefit eligibility. So you think about our poverty threshold, which is set by the US Census Bureau. It's an annual estimation. And then on the right-hand side, our poverty guidelines are used to determine eligibility for benefits. So on the left-hand side of your screen, the US poverty threshold that's set by the Census Bureau calculated that in 2021, almost 38 million people lived in poverty. That's where that 11.6% number came from. But this formula that's used to determine the poverty threshold is based on a formula that's about 50 years old and has never actually been updated. It's based on a emergency food plan calculation that was part of trying to assess what need looked like in the 1950s. And since it has not been updated, what we see is focusing on the left-hand side of your screen, the orange circle where it says 3 people. So a poverty threshold is by household and by the number of people in a household. So for a 3-person household, in this instance, I chose an adult with 2 minor children. For them to be in poverty, they would have to make under $21,831 a year. Once their income climbs $1 above that, they are no longer considered in poverty for the purposes of our US poverty measurement calculations. And I just really like to point that out because these numbers so drastically under captured need in our country because these numbers are so low. $21,000 barely goes anywhere. I didn't even cover a modest apartment in terms of housing. And that when you see poverty numbers and the way that they change over time, which realistically they change very little over time, I want you to consider that this number drastically underrepresents actual need in this country and what it needs for somebody to even meet their bare minimum necessities. And then when we think about how that affects benefit eligibility, the number on the right-hand side of your screen that's connected to the other orange circle for that 3-person household, that 100% of poverty level is $24,860 a year for the purpose of determining benefit eligibility. For the SNAP program, for example, the green circle, a 3-person household has to be under 130% of the federal poverty level, and that's about $32,018 a year. Once that family's income climbs above that amount, they are no longer eligible for SNAP. And you're fortunate enough in Kentucky to have leveraged a policy called broad-based categorical eligibility, which allows your state to raise the gross income limit in SNAP all the way up to 200% of the federal poverty level. So that same 3-person household could receive SNAP as long as their income remained under that $49,720 a year annually. And this is obviously a massive annual difference in income, but the benefit in this increased policy that Kentucky has taken advantage of is that while that household's income is slowly climbing up to that, 49,000 and some change amount, their SNAP benefit is slowly decreasing. It's sort of like an X, if you will, increase in income and a lower SNAP benefit amount. So by the time that person reaches that 200% of the federal poverty level, they will have experienced a gradual decline in their SNAP benefit, which smooths the effect, which we refer to as the cliff effect. So the cliff effect is when a very small increase in income results in total loss in benefits that actually leaves families worse off than they were before the increase. And at that 130% federal poverty level, it's very common that families, particularly those with high housing and childcare costs, experience a very steep cliff effect. I'm happy to answer any questions as we go along. So please do feel free to put questions in the chat or clarify anything. I know this is like an incredibly complicated policy space, but I think it's helpful to think about what do we mean when we talk about people who we are trying to target in poverty? What are the income levels that they're actually facing and how drastically they are underrepresented, to emphasize how important it is that we maximize every opportunity to connect students to additional resources and to connect public benefit recipients or clients to post-secondary credentials to help them improve their economic security. Next slide, please. So we think about traditional student aid as all of these pillars on the left-hand side, and this is obviously not an exhaustive list. It's a high-level look at what we think about when we think about traditionally targeting students with additional resources. And our new vision for student aid is to really think about basic needs programs, those in the orange pillar on the right-hand side, as part of comprehensive supports for students. So you have the SNAP and SNAP Employment and Training Program, which provides a modest assurance people can meet their basic need for food every month. There is a benefit amount based on family size. So for example, I think the average SNAP benefit amount for a single person is about $130 a month. There have been a lot of discussions. I also work at the federal level, so there have been a lot of discussions about needing to increase work requirements of the SNAP program, which have existed since the 70s. And then to ensure that there's an additional, there are more people who are subject to SNAP's work requirements. So we think it's really important that to understand that the work requirements are actually very harmful. The vast majority of people who are on SNAP are already working, and those who aren't working are usually facing some sort of barrier that they have a difficult time overcoming, including mental health challenges, physical health challenges, transportation, childcare barriers, things like that. And that nobody should have to work as a requirement to just be able to meet their most basic need for food. The other thing that comes up in conversations at the federal level that I think is important context is if you are a single person and you are getting, let's say, the SNAP and your average benefit amount is $130 a month, that's not enough to live off of. So this notion that somebody could like receive SNAP and not work and just live off of SNAP is actually kind of ridiculous, because $130 would probably not even buy 2 weeks worth of a normal grocery budget, let alone provide somebody all of the resources they would need to make their ends meet for the month. The SNAP Employment and Training Program is SNAP's, I sort of think about it as like kind of partner program where it provides additional resources to help people engage in employment and training activities. Post-secondary credentials can be included in that, and the benefit is that the SNAP Employment and Training Program can provide things like tuition, books, childcare, help with transportation barriers, and some states have leveraged an exhaustive and flexible SNAP Employment and Training programs that are really well connected and embedded in their post-secondary institutions. For example, Washington State has all 35 of their community colleges as SNAP E&T providers, and that allows those providers, those institutions, to draw down a 50% match from the federal government for resources that they are spending on those services for SNAP E&T participants. The TANF Cash Assistance Program, what we traditionally think of as welfare, provides a nominal cash benefit for children or families with children. And there are ways that the TANF program can be expanded to better support post-secondary students. You actually have a fantastic program ready to work in Kentucky that allows your TANF participants to engage in post-secondary credentials. And my understanding is also that your KTAP, your TANF program in Kentucky is called KTAP, Kentucky Transitional Assistance Program, I believe is the acronym, just received an expansion. I believe it was the first expansion in the state in a very long time that's going to provide much needed benefits for people, as well as reach more people who have very low income. So it's phenomenal to see since 1995. That's amazing. It's really, for those of you who are not that familiar with the TANF/KTAP program, this is like a historic event for people in Kentucky with very low incomes to have increased access to supports. And one of the other benefits that your KTAP program provides is access to childcare, which TANF can also provide, because the Child Care Development Fund, or you call it CCAP, I believe in Kentucky, provides childcare subsidies to people with very low incomes, but there are not enough resources for all of the people who need access to childcare subsidies. And so it does not reach as far as it does not reach all of the people who are eligible. So that's why the TANF program is also very important, because it provides additional assistance for childcare as well. Both TANF and childcare are what we call block grants. So they are a set bucket of money that states get each month, and they're required to bring additional spending to the table. And there are a variety of restrictions/flexibility in both of those programs that can be leveraged to improve access for post-secondary students, or to increase access to post-secondary for those benefit clients. I include Medicaid and housing, even though Medicaid doesn't have any specific student restrictions at this point. If you probably recall that there were attempts to implement work requirements in the Medicaid program a couple of years ago, after Medicaid expansion, and that conversation is not over. That decision is currently with the Supreme Court to assess if work requirements are legally permissible in the Medicaid program. And when the Biden administration took over, they asked the Supreme Court to hold off reviewing that decision so the administration could review the policy. All of that is to say that we have not heard the end of work requirements in Medicaid. And when work requirements were in discussion, students were exempted to varying degrees of intensity similar to other programs. So based on enrollment intensity, or combined with the work requirement. So this will be an important conversation for us to continue to follow as that evolves. And generally in housing, most students are restricted from having access to housing unless they meet what we generally think of in higher ed as like independent indicators. So married, a veteran, has their own dependent. There are other pretty severe restrictions on students' ability to access housing outside of those things. Next slide, please. So I've been in this work for a while, and my colleagues before me that have even preceded this work have done a lot of assessment of what does it mean to think about accessing public benefits as part of a comprehensive financial aid system. And, you know, one of the things that we think is most important to this conversation is that, you know, this notion that higher ed or post-secondary education is not workforce development is a dated perspective that does not reflect the realities of the economy or the demands of employers. And so ensuring that federal and state programs maximize federal and state investments in higher education, that they align with your state's economic, you know, workforce development goals, that the, you know, programs and recipients on the human services side are really who you are targeting for enrollment and re-enrollment for your state's college completion goals, and recognizing that access to those benefits can support post-secondary success and completion, because you're reducing unmet financial need, you're increasing financial stability, helping students afford necessities, decreasing debt levels. And so we really think it's a common sense and practical approach that any program, federal or state program, maximize access to post-secondary credentials and not serve as a barrier. Next slide, please. So when we think about immediate strategies, and as Lily mentioned, part of these things have been in discussion and are in current conversations with the Basic Needs Action Network. You've all already talked about some of these things as well. So we think about aligning public benefit workforce development programs, ensuring that students are at the table in the design of support services, and that they are accessible with sort of the end user in mind. surveying students about their experiences, using data to understand what students are facing. And then if we think about the myriad of ways that institutions communicate with students at, enrollment, financial aid, orientation, across all of the different ways we communicate, each and every one of those opportunities is a place where we could be talking about access to additional resources and thinking about not siloing those conversations to one department or to one role function, and making the ability to discuss these access to programs and resources in a broader context as just part of how institutions communicate to and with students. And then collaborating with local human services agencies. I know there's some discussion about navigators on your campuses and about bringing in specialists, and I love to hear it. One of the states that I've provided technical assistance in Colorado, they had a human services worker come on campus with their laptop, like I think it was like maybe once a week, and just set aside dedicated time to do benefits enrollment and troubleshoot applications. And then, partnering with the state agency, which we're in current conversations with your DCBS agency that administer these programs, to identify where there are existing flexibilities in the state that could potentially be maximized on the policy side to support all of the institutional efforts. And we have community-based organizations on this call today, and we'll hear more about them, but ways to partner with community-based organizations to think about providing on-campus programming. One of my favorite examples is from an institution I worked with in the city of New Orleans, where they partnered with a local faith-based organization to bring mental health resources onto the campus. And it was not only crisis mental health services, but they had somebody who came on campus regularly to meet with students who are facing mental health challenges, which we know is one of the biggest barriers that students are facing right now. Next slide, please. And then we think about expanded opportunities, policy opportunities. In the state of California and in Massachusetts, they actually use their TANF block grant to fund need-based financial aid. So that would be for that TANF KTAP income eligible population. And Tennessee uses their state TANF funds to provide a last dollar tuition amount for certain students. And then we already mentioned leveraging the SNAP ENT program to create additional supportive services. And for example, in Maine, they have the HOPE program, which they use their state TANF dollars to actually fund campus navigators on campuses for TANF eligible students. University of Hawaii has done something similar in the past. Actually, I think they were one of the first programs in the state that funded resources on the University of Hawaii campuses using TANF dollars. And the state of Virginia is using an expansive model where they are leveraging their state SNAP employment and training dollars to fund a program called Single Stop, which is kind of a separate program, but it has people come in on campus and work with people to connect them to public benefits and help them troubleshoot their benefits applications and find additional community resources. And then cost beyond tuition, SNAP ENT can be used to fund, books, transportation, childcare, including participant reimbursements, depending on how the state designs their program. And childcare programs can also cover study time and travel time, as well as just in-seat class time. And then thinking about expanding Medicaid to improve access to healthcare and mental health care. So for example, less common on two-year institutional campuses, but for your institutions that have mental and physical clinics, ensuring that they accept Medicaid as a form of insurance is also something that can be really beneficial. Next slide, please. Okay, so a couple of key takeaways is really just ensuring that we understand that when we talk about U.S. poverty, that drastically underrepresents need and hardship, and that our poverty measurements affect benefits eligibility. So many of people with low incomes, even when they receive public benefits, still have difficulty making ends meet, which is why it's so critical that we do everything that we can to ensure that people who are eligible get access to resources. And I think that's my last slide, but I'm happy to answer any questions if we have time, Lily. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That's a lot of information, everybody. I understand, and especially because the benefits lingo and all the programs, and the eligibility requirements, it's basically It's a bucket of expertise similar to understanding college admissions or financial aid on our end of the puzzle. So does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask Carrie directly right now? You can always throw it in the chat or save it for the breakout rooms.
Yep. And I'm happy to provide my email address if anybody wants to have follow-up conversations or interested in additional information.
So Carrie's been supporting our work here in Kentucky since this past June, and she'll continue to be a resource to us over the next year as well as we move forward with the implementation planning. So just really thankful to always be able to call on you, Carrie. You're an amazing expert. Okay, so now I'd like to transition to a community partner panel here with our own Kentucky experts, and would love, let's see, to introduce Sarah Brady with the Family Scholar House, Clarissa Sangayo with the Department for Community-Based Services, and Jessica Klein with the Kentucky Center for Economic Policy, and Thrive KY. Okay, let me see. I'm gonna stop sharing so I can spotlight.
Search for Ross. He's good.
Where's Reese? There you are, Reese. Am I out of that spotlight? Well, okay, I'm going to get started, and I'm going to keep track of where Reese is. Sorry. Here you are. Okay, fantastic. So first of all, I would just love to ask you all a quick question, if you don't mind, telling us a little bit about your organizations, kind of the mission and the goals as it relates to supporting basic needs for post-secondary students. And Sarah, I'll turn it over to you first.
Good morning, everyone. If you're not familiar with Family Scholar House, our mission is to end the cycle of poverty and transform communities by empowering families and youth to succeed in education and achieve lifelong self-sufficiency. And really what that means is addressing basic needs for students who are pursuing post-secondary. And as you know, we've really been working upstream in the past couple of years and still holding our roots in our traditional model of providing housing to our most vulnerable populations of single parents and young adults who have aged out of foster care, but working upstream to support everyone in those post-secondary paths, because there are so many other vulnerable populations who need assistance, who need access to benefits, need access to support services, and really being able to take those traditional wraparound support services that Family Scholar House has been recognized for so long, and being able to support past just single parents and young adults as well.
Thank you. Jessica?
Hi, I'm Jessica Klein. I'm a policy associate with Kentucky Center for Economic Policy. And what we do is work on all policies that improve quality of life for Kentuckians to thrive. That covers a lot, but higher education and basic needs are two of those priorities. And some of the ways we do that is through communications, research, and advocacy. And so one of the ways that we implement those tools is through coalitions. So one of the ones I wanted to talk about today is the Thrive Kentucky campaign. It started off as an Ensure Kentucky campaign around Medicaid, and we really expanded to embrace the entire safety net. And so our mission is to reach the basic needs of every Kentuckian through a systemic change, because we know that many Kentuckians face historic and systematic barriers to those basic needs. So happy to talk more about that, and thank you so much for having me.
Reese?
Good morning. I'm Clarissa Sangayo. I'm a public assistance program specialist with DCBS within the Division of Family Support. The Family Support serves citizens by, providing childcare, SNAP and KTAP and Medicaid benefits, but also another part of DCBS is our protection and permanency. Our overall goal is to assist our citizens meet their basic needs, make sure that children and adults are safe and in nurturing homes and communities. And as with student, within that group is the students, and we've been learning a little bit more about how we can meet the students' needs. In the past few years, we focused a little bit on having a human-centered model for our services. So we're able to see the different population. It's not just one group who need it, but within that group, there's students, there's children, there's elderly. So with the human-centered model, we were able to focus on different groups, and we've created work groups statewide to address inequalities. And then, we started with the Student Basic Needs Network so that we can learn more about how we can help students. So I think we're kind of getting there where we're understanding more, and then we're looking at the recommendations and seeing what other states are doing within the SNAP ENT and the TANF program that we can help students. So I'm really excited to be a part of this. And I want to, be a part of where we can help students, because for me, I didn't realize that there were so many. And so it's eye-opening to be a part of this network. So I'm really excited about the work that we're all doing together.
Thank you so much, Grace. Okay, next question. I'm hoping that y'all could share a little bit about ways that you currently partner with colleges and universities in Kentucky to support students. And Sarah, do you mind picking it up?
Yeah. So we partner in a couple different ways, but the biggest way is through our Trigger Response Center. We're partnered with various different schools across the state to provide services to students for them to call into our response center and be able to receive those services. And we work on a 3-tier approach. So we're using the resources already available at the college when the students are calling in. So connecting them to the food pantries at the colleges, connecting them to mental health resources, connecting them to all of the wonderful resources that the colleges are offering to ensure that they're using those. And then we're also able to then look at the community if we're not able to meet the needs at the college level. So referring to their community to find food pantries, to find mental health resources, to provide different funding opportunities for students who may need utilities paid for, rental assistance, whatever the case may be, referring to the community first. And then that last tier is then Family Scholar House resources. So us stepping in to be able to meet those needs, whether it's meeting with one of our family advocates or our art therapists or our health and wellness coach, which really being able to step in and provide the services and doing whatever we can to help a student overcome whatever their barrier is. But we also do outbound calls on behalf of the colleges as well. And all of those are targeted towards support, enrollment, retention, success, celebration, and everything in between, from as simple as calling to check in at the beginning of the semester to make sure that they have everything that they need to be successful for the semester, or being more targeted of students who may have several starfish flags, who may be at risk of withdrawing or failing, or that may be even eligible for a specific scholarship, or congratulating them on finishing their credential or finishing their program. Really doing any and everything to be able to engage the students and really deepen the relationship that they have with their college, because all of the work that we do on behalf of when we're working through the response center, and being able to, us to empower them and help them strive to be their best, and creating those cycles of success and promoting and supporting a path to sustained employment, career growth, and then in turn, giving back and contributing into our society. But we also have our free resource web app, myky.info. That is, there's a kiosk all across the states. I know that there are a handful in different colleges and universities across the state as well. But myky.info is a free resource web app where students students can get connected to free resources in their area. It was formerly just in Louisville as Louis Connect. In July of 2022, we took it statewide, and it's still building. We're still, adding resources every day. We have AmeriCorps Vistas out in different communities, really going out and to visit and vet all of these organizations and all of these resources in the communities across Kentucky to really do all that we can to find the best free resources to support students to and to connect students to, and really just helping them overcome all of their basic needs.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm trying to track some of this in the chat for everybody. There's a lot that you can always connect with the Family Scholar House to do. And I don't know if you wanted to mention, Sarah, the Bluegrass Community and Technical College staffing partnership that you all have.
Yes, and we also have a couple different partnerships too. So we have staff on site at Elizabethtown Community and Technical College, Bluegrass Community and Technical College. We're working as diligently as we can to put a couple different people in some other places as well, like Bellarmine and Ivy Tech and different places in our service reach, to really be able to support students at a deeper level. Our relationship with the colleges where we have people on site are very ingrained. They understand and see the depth of the services that someone is able to provide from a different perspective outside of the college, and being able to be that connector, but also be someone who can just be someone to listen and be the support and connect to SNAP and TANF and mental health and Medicaid and all the different things.
Thank you, Sarah. Jessica, I want to turn to you and see, I know I've participated in a few of the Thrive KY in-person meetings or webinars, and would love to just hear more about how our higher ed partners might be able to connect more directly with the Thrive KY info and trainings.
Absolutely. Thank you. So Thrive Kentucky. So we are really, I mentioned our goal, but really we're a group of such a variety of different expertise and service providers. So we have mental health, nonprofits, food access, housing, insecurity, KTAP experts, all of those folks in one place. So what we do often in terms of that systematic change for basic needs is both education and advocacy. So the ways that we do that is through different webinars and then in-person events too that Lily was mentioning. So what that looks like is we have a monthly advocacy webinar that we host, and really the goal is to share out policy updates at both the state and federal level. So again, administrative and legislative policy updates on basic needs programs, and then also share out opportunities to advocate for change in those. So students are definitely a group that we've been providing updates, but maybe could use more of a voice from that team. So definitely would love to engage more with different student voices. And I think, we've really seen an increase in that information with the pandemic and all of the policy changes that have happened during that time. So that's definitely something we're beginning to do more of. We also, as part of that monthly advocacy series, have a quarterly conversation with some of the CHFS staff. So occasionally Clarissa will have Todd Trapp come on, and Carrie Vanahan and a few other CHFS staff come on and really go through some of the details on recent policy changes and program changes that are relevant to people. So the next one is actually coming up May 2nd. So if that's something you'd love to learn more about some of the recent changes and programs, definitely encourage you to join those. But this summer, we're also doing an in-person series. We're providing updates to everybody with our team of experts. So those are going to be regional. We call it the Thrive Kentucky Roadshow because we're really driving around the state and trying to get to different groups. So I can share that flyer with Lily as well. But the next one's going to be May 23rd in Covington. So what we share is updates on the economy, Medicaid, K-CHIP, SNAP, housing, childcare, public health, behavioral health. We try to cover it all. So it really is a jam-packed agenda, tons of information, but that's always followed up with resources and slides and our emails so that you can always reach out to us if you're looking for specific resources on a topic. And if there's a specific, student policy change that we could focus on, that's something our advocates are interested in talking to you about. So yes, I can definitely share the links to those upcoming in-person events and the recent CHFS quarterly webinar as well. So thank you. Yeah, I'd love to see some of your faces there.
I'll definitely include that in the follow-up from this meeting. So thank you so much, Jessica. Was there anything else, Jessica? I feel like I remember you all were putting out a platform where folks doing basic needs work could connect with one another. Is that still out there?
Yes, so we're working on Kentucky Loop, and it's going to be a platform for anybody doing kind of outreach work around basic needs programs. So we recently had to switch providers in the development of the platform, so it's taking a little bit longer than we wanted. But I think this summer we're planning to launch that, and then that'll be a tool to get updates on outreach work and those kinds of tools.
Okay, great. Thanks. So that update will be coming soon, everybody. All right, so I'm going to switch now to Clarissa. And would love, from the DCBS perspective, you can go all the different angles and directions. So would love to hear, if there are ways that that DCBS is currently in partnership with any of our colleges and universities in Kentucky, but then also thinking about how is DCBS helping individuals who may be receiving public benefits access those secondary programs?
Sure. One, as Carrie mentioned, we do have the TANF program and the Ready to Work program within the KTAP, Kentucky Transitional Assistance Program. And KWP is Kentucky Works program, which a KTAP recipient may have to participate in. So one of the things that is an approved KWP activity is attending school. And we do have contracts with KCTCS, Eastern Kentucky University, Northern Kentucky University, and Murray State. So they have the Ready to Work coordinators on campus that DCBS case managers can refer students to, and then they get that assistance with the coordinators. And I believe that the case managers and the coordinators try to keep open communication so that way they can continue to support the student once they start school, and then they work more with the coordinators. And with SNAP, it's we don't have that kind of contract with the universities. We do allow, they have that stringent student eligibility rules. We did recently do a change where some KCTCS programs, like the non-transferable degrees or credentials, can be approved ENT components. So if they're in those programs at least half time, they don't meet any of the student exemptions, as long as they are in that, and then they connect with an ENT provider and are put in that ENT component for vocational education, they meet that eligibility requirement. So, that's one of the things that we're helping some of the students be able to be eligible for SNAP. We have heard that there are some other flexibilities that other states are doing, so we're looking into that. We're really wanting to make it a little bit more easy for students. Like I said, they struggle as much as everyone else, and having that support would help them. So we're looking at the recommendations. And also with ENT, I think the focus before was to get someone to work. And I think now that they realize for someone to get that job that has sustaining wages, self-sustaining wages, that education and learning new skills is a part of it. So, they are, the federal level is letting us know that we can look at colleges, at universities, and see where we can help, because that skills training that they would receive really does help in the long run with the workforce. So I think that, the ENT focus a lot has helped, where they've shifted more, a little bit more into education, skills building, rather than, just being in the workforce right away. Like I said, we're looking at the recommendations. We want to expand our connector network, our SNAP outreach network, so we can maybe have someone on campuses and help navigate students, help them apply for benefits, make sure that they understand that, you know, this is what the requirements are, this is what you need to do, and kind of guide them through that whole process. So we're looking into that. I think there's a lot of changes that we can do, and with being part of this network, it really has opened our eyes that it's not just limited to the work activity, the employment activity that TANF and SNAP requires, but there's other ways that we can help, not just you're supposed to do this. As you know, some policy are tend to do.
Reese, one thing that I'd love for you to just expand on a little bit for our campus partners is the SNAP outreach program or SNAP education. And I'm not sure the difference myself, but would love to know if there's an opportunity for campuses to become a SNAP outreach partner. What does that look like for capacity support or resource reimbursement that they might be able to receive as they help students maybe do benefits eligibility screening or those kind of activities?
Unfortunately, I should have asked one of the connector, the ones who do that. I'm not sure. We do partner with different organizations throughout the state, counties where the campuses are, and we have connectors. We have Medicaid connectors, and then we recently started SNAP connectors. So organizations such as the community action agencies, the Catholic Charities, and God's Pantry. So they're part of the SNAP outreach and connector program. So they are able to answer questions, take the applications, or begin the applications. One of the things that we still have to do is make sure that the application is actually completed by a state worker, a merit worker, but these connectors and the outreach agencies can start that, can explain a little bit about the program. So I can give you a list of the orgs that are included, and can get more information about how to become a connector. I know that the person who in my branch, Megan Snow, she said that that's one of the things, one of her goals. And when I told her that Todd and Lisa had talked about going to campuses and talking about that, she was excited. So she's ready for to talk to colleges about more how to become connectors. And I can get more information. I apologize, I don't have a lot of information on that, but it would be someone that would come to the campus and possibly would have access to enter an application. So that way they'll be there where the students are, rather than the students having to call or having to go to the local office. Yeah. So I do know that's one of the things that they can do.
Thank you so much. I think that, we're going to continue to explore all of these opportunities for partnership and increased capacity on our campuses to do this hard work. And so just stay tuned for those opportunities, but you can always reach out. And Reese, if you're not the right contact person, but a campus is interested in learning more about becoming going through a connector training or becoming a SNAP outreach partner, would love to share that with folks in the follow-up email.
Okay.
Okay. Now I think that kind of leads into my last question. And just like, how do campuses get connected to you or, your organization and the opportunities for partnership that you've already talked about? Sarah, I'll kick it off with you.
Yeah, it really, all that starts with the work that we do with our response center is just talking with the leadership of the college, and getting an MOA in place for data protection purposes. From there, it is a very quick turnaround, being able to assist students in overcoming those basic need barriers, but also to really get some good data back. While we're having these conversations with students, as we're doing our benefits assessment and our self-sufficiency matrix, we're able to give all of that information back to the colleges so they can really understand on a deeper level how many of their students are experiencing a food insecurity, how many are homeless? How many are struggling with transportation and unreliable transportation? We're really able to give a deeper understanding to colleges based off of the information that we're able to receive during those phone calls. So just reach out to me if interested in partnering on a deeper level, and we can get connected and get things moving.
Thank you, Sarah. And if it's all right, I'll include your email in the follow-up as well. Okay, great.
Perfect.
Jessica, what about you?
Yeah, the best way to engage is to join one of our webinars or in-person roadshow events. They are interactive, even though we're, I said packing in a lot of information in a short period of time. They are interactive, and we do love to connect with people when we're doing those, especially the in-person events. We only do that a couple times a year, so it is really special to us to start to meet everybody who's trying to get some of that basic needs information. So definitely that's how we collaborate with people, is by meeting them in those events. And then we try to create opportunities to advocate based on, what you're interested in and what we identify as priorities to change basic needs. So those events are the best place. We do send out updates and emails after each of those monthly meetings to make sure you're staying up to date and answer your questions, always following up on questions we don't have time for during the webinars. So that's the best way to connect with us. I do want to share KFAN, the Kentucky Food Action Network, is a subset of Thrive folks who lead specifically on food. So we're doing a lot of community engagement around food access. So if you're looking for partners in your community around food access, and that's something specific you're interested in, or SNAP specifically, that group is another resource of people who can help more with connecting people and resources around food access. And I would be the contact for that. So you can email me at jessica@kypolicy.org. But yeah, those are the best ways to connect.
How does one get on the newsletter? Receive your listserv emails?
So for the Kentucky Food Action Network, we have a new website, and there's a log on for that where you can join and receive all of our updates. And then for Thrive, by attending, we collect your email address, and then you'll receive the update after that meeting. So registering is the best way.
Okay, and so I know that I find out about those webinars because I'm on an email that gets the notification like, hey, you might want to join this webinar. I can send that out to,
Yes.
this group the next time that there's one coming up. Okay, Reese?
Hear me? Well, the best way to connect with us, I know, like for individual student information, the case managers with Ready to Work would be a great way, but for agency connection, definitely Division of Family Support. I'm one of the Student Basic Needs Action Network members, along with Ann Smith. And then any information that you need, we can connect you to, like with SNAP Outreach, we can connect you to Blenda. And so we would be the best way to connect. I'm sorry. And also, if there's any questions that need to go to upper management, then we can share that with Lisa, with our director, with the commissioner, with Todd, which is our director at DFS. So, the best way to get what resources we have available and how to use you as a resource, and send it to our field staff probably would be the best way, is the Division of Family Central Office.
Thank you so much, Reese. Does anybody have a question that you'd like to ask any of the panelists before we move on? Okay. Well, we can certainly dig deeper and talk more in the breakout rooms as we kind of move forward. So the next phase of our meeting today is we're going to go into 3 different breakout rooms, and Carrie, Phyllis, Clark with the collaborative, and myself will be facilitators in those rooms. And I know, Sarah, you have to jump to another meeting, but hopefully Jessica and Clarissa, you all can stay. And then we can just be in the room for the continued conversation with our campus partners. Really would love to just kind of discuss feedback on those emerging priorities. Are those hitting the mark? Do those really, you think like, oh my gosh, if there was a statewide approach to helping us with our communications, helping us with our eligibility screening, helping us with capacity building, like I'm just really curious to know if there's other big things that are missing. And then finally, you know, how are you going to continue to leverage community resources on your campuses to better support and provide holistic support to students? And then of course, what is happening next? I know it's the end of the school year. And so many of us kind of the work like shifts gears over the summer. But certainly I'm sure that you all have plans and big ideas for what's next. And so sharing those in the breakouts will be really great to hear from peers. So we're going to be in breakout for about 30 minutes, and then we'll come back to the big group. And then I do have a special guest at the end that I'd love. I hope y'all can stick around. Trellis, the Student Financial Wellness Survey organization, is going to share some information with all of our campus partners who are invited to participate in this Student Financial Wellness Survey starting in fall of 23. Okay, so Nan is going to dismiss us to breakout rooms, and I look forward to seeing you all there.
You're in room 3, Lily. I couldn't put you in there. I don't know why.
Okay, so I need to join room 3. Got it. Okay.
Really great note too. It stopped right on time. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Okay, well, you know, this is just a little like come back together. Does anybody want to share any, I guess, like takeaways or next steps that you have for either your campus team or yourself personally? Is there anything that came up for you that you definitely want to follow up on? Ariane? Okay, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
Can you hear me at all?
Barely.
Yeah, now you're okay.
Can you hear me better now?
Okay, yes.
Okay, I don't know why that is, but we'll keep it like that. So for group 2, there are a couple things that I noted, and just some really key takeaways. So one of the things that really stood out was being able to communicate across the board with organizations who are doing similar things. So there was a mention of like Mindful, KY, DCES has a platform. Phyllis also mentioned possibly an app that did some very similar work, you know, just sharing resources and things that you can navigate to. I'm also familiar with one as well that is paid for by like Medicaid MMOs. So, you know, just making sure that those organizations can like collab in the future would be really great to make sure that the information is cohesive, it's the correct information, everybody is sharing the right information. I think that'll be more efficient so that folks go across those platforms whenever they're sharing. They all have, you know, wealth of information, but it's the same information, correct information. And they don't have to navigate between a bunch of platforms to do that. One of the key things I think Phyllis was saying towards the end was processing our seasons and like the things of the seasons and how we do things. So I know one of the things that EKU mentioned that they use a slate programming, and they're able to build out campaigns and information through that. So using some of the things like even we think about, summer and fall and things that we have going on, to being able to use programs for communication according to what seasons we're in was really good and helpful. One of the priorities and next steps came out throughout our meeting, but just using our resources. Southeast has their peer forward specialists that are engaging with students on a more personal level. Found it to be really helpful. That's not just connecting with the students and establishing rapport, but also encouraging and continuing that communication about resources and things that are available for students, but also things of breaking down their stigma. So those are some key points that I thought were important for groups.
Thank you, Erin. Anyone else want to share? Our group kind of focused on thinking about what are the next steps and who needs to be at the table, and really trying to, I think, be intentional to work smart and not, okay, well, if this is going to be happening down the road, do we get started now? Do we do our own thing? Do we want to be a part of, just kind of wait to see what else is going to be coming our way? So I thought those were really good conversations. There is a lot of really positive energy, I think, right now in this work, and hopefully the direction that we're going. But I think that each campus in your own priorities, you're going to have, there's so much of the relationship building work that does just take time. So I would say it's always worthwhile to get started and to have those conversations. And even if you just bring some of these emerging recommendations to the table in your group to have an initial conversation around, how does this sound right here with us here at U of L or at UK or at Owensboro or wherever you might be. Okay, well, what things do we already have really far down the line? Where are some real opportunities where we might want to focus our energy and kind of maybe use those recommendations as a conversational guide to begin with? That could make you feel like you've got a yes and, like we're going to be aligned, but we're also moving forward. Is there any takeaways from your room, or anybody in your room want to share?
We definitely, we had a mix of insights coming out of our room that were, really talking about identifying mental health training and certifications as an opportunity, finding additional resources just from the standpoint of it doesn't feel like there is enough capacity to deal with all of the student need. Particularly when we think about also mental health resources and having the capacity to do those things. And then there were some good discussions about how one campus was able to receive grant funding from a local organization to establish their food pantry, which they received ongoing funding for, and questions around how to work together with Family Scholar House in a more dedicated way. So it was a really good mix of doing lots of things and also identifying opportunities for future activity.
Great. Okay, well, now I would like to introduce you all to another wonderful resource that we have available to us in Kentucky. Jeff Webster is with the Trellis Student Financial Wellness Organization, or actually it's just Trellis, but they offer a student financial wellness resource for campuses. And so I know in Kentucky, U of L has participated in the Trellis survey. KCTCS as a system participated in the wellness survey this last year, and I believe Western Kentucky has participated in it. But this is a free resource that is open to all campuses, and obviously as you have new students that enter your campus, sometimes it is helpful to update the survey findings just to make sure that, just to track the trends. But I'm going to turn it over to Jeff, and he's got some information to share with us.
Thank you. I'll try to share my screen.
Let me, there you go.
All right. Can people see that? Thumbs up. Everything good? All right. So thank you for letting me talk with you today. We all know that student finances are key to college access, retention, and graduation. Our survey provides schools with the evidence at the appropriate breadth and depth they need to serve their students with purpose and precision. The results of this survey are also of keen interest to policymakers concerned about student debt, basic needs, equity, college affordability, and mental health. Happy to answer questions at the end of the presentation. You can add questions in the chat also. Trellis is a nonprofit. We're focused on helping students leverage the power of post-secondary education and learning to improve their quality of life and the communities where they live. We are based in Texas, but the research team is fully remote. We've got researchers in 9 different states, 3 different time zones. And yes, we do have a researcher based in Lexington. So it's nice to have that Kentucky representation. And for those who don't know, I'm originally from Kentucky also. Research has been a part of Trellis from almost its beginning. And we have over 30 years of experience conducting higher education research for both colleges and policymakers. We design and implement research strategies focused on higher education, and we look at student success primarily through the lens of college affordability. And we work with schools across the country. We produced nearly 400 reports last year. We surveyed over 2.4 million students in the past 4 years, and we've worked with 125 different various clients serving their higher education research needs. And if you want to keep track of what we're up to, there's a QR code. We have a web page with a lot of good information. But really, our premier research initiative is the Student Financial Wellness Survey. And this is a self-reported online survey that documents the financial well-being and student success indicators of post-secondary students. Like was said, the survey is free to schools to participate, and Trellis uses the information to produce customized reports for each participating school. And also we do more aggregated reports to inform policymakers. This project has led to some of really the most deepest, most thoughtful engagement that I've experienced in my 36 years at Trellis. And since we began this survey, let's see, looking at my notes here. So this is the response we got from the Kentucky Community College Technical Community and Technical Colleges, 16 schools. We had 2 4-year schools, 1 4-year public and 4-year private. But we are going to just focus on community colleges. It seems to, since we don't have really the representation for 4-year, these just represent this system. So we had 43,000 students surveyed. We got responses from 2,700, basically. Response rate 6.3%. And it's a long survey, but it only takes about 14 minutes. And here's the list of the schools that participated. Obviously a lot of 2-year schools, but it is open to 4-year, and we would love to have more 4 years in the upcoming survey. And just wanted to show you Here's an example of one thing that the participating schools get. It's a one-page infographic. So this is the one for fall 22. It highlights some key findings from the survey in this nice visual format, one page, easy to read, easy to share. Don't expect you to read this little picture of it though, so we'll look closer in the next couple slides. So for Kentucky community colleges in 2022, the use of personal savings and current wages were fairly common for students to pay for college, but only 3% of respondents said that they only use personal savings or current wages for both pay for school. So most students are using other resources as well, such as grants, loans, and help from family to pay for college. So the whole canard of, why can't students pay for this themselves, like I did way back in the woebegone days? It's extremely rare these days. And these figures are very much in line with our national figures. Let's see. So we also learned that 66% said they would have trouble getting $500 in cash or credit in case of an emergency in the next month. This is certainly concerning. About a quarter of the respondents said they would not be able to get that amount of money from any resource. So, there's not much of a buffer protecting students from running out of money, which obviously, in addition to their whole well-being, affects their ability to be the student that they're capable of being. Looking further at financial fragility, 59% of respondents said that they worry about having enough money to pay for school. And 37% of respondents reported that they ran out of money 6 or more times during the year that they took the survey. So we launched in October, so it's basically based on the last 10 months, we had that many people run out of money 6 times, 6 or more times. We use a number of different scales in our survey, including scales for basic need security and scales for mental health challenges. In the 2022 version, we found that just over half of respondents reported that they had experienced housing insecurity at some point that year. And about a quarter would be categorized as having very low food security based on their responses to the scale. And almost half of respondents indicated that they had experienced anxiety around the time that they took the survey based on responses to that scale. In the survey, we also asked questions about use of credit, including credit card use. We found that while a majority of respondents who had used a credit card in the last year said that they always paid their credit card bill on time, 71%, so that's great. However, only 26% said that they pay the full balance each month. So that means that many students are accruing very high interest rates each month. So that's concerning. And then at the end of the infographic, there's a positive note. We did find that 75% of respondents agreed or strongly agreed that the cost of college is a good investment to their financial future. So despite the struggles we talked about, most students are still anticipating a good return on their investment, which is great because we know from data that on average, there is a good return on investment. So now we're going to spend the next few slides looking at what we're calling key distress indicators. And these indicators are in the left-hand column, and include experienced financial difficulty while enrolled, would have trouble finding $500 in an emergency, would not be able to get $500 in that emergency, ran out of money 8 or more times during that year, sold belongings to make ends meet, indicated depression, indicated anxiety, experienced very low food security, experienced housing insecurity, and experienced homelessness. The top row shows all participating institutions, and then the second row shows just the Kentucky community colleges, community and technical colleges. And then for this table, we're looking at some student characteristics: non-white, female, first generation, part-time students. And so you can see how that deviates for each one of these stress indicators. The line with all Kentucky colleges is that green line, green box. That's the one you'll want to compare the other rows to. And there are many interesting findings here, but I'll point out the two indicators circled in red: not being able to get $500 in an emergency and running out of money. These two distress indicators had comparatively higher percentages of female and first generation students. 90% of those who couldn't get $500 were female, compared to 80% female overall for the respondents to the survey. So like the last table, you'll see the same distress indicators in the left column. These will be the same stress indicators we look at for the remaining tables as well. This table is looking at variables related to student success. So missing classes due to lack of childcare or lack of transportation, difficulty concentrating on schoolwork because of your financial situation. So again, there are many interesting findings, but higher percentages of those who had experienced basic needs insecurity, higher percentages who had experienced basic needs insecurity reported being a parent, missing classes, and having difficulty concentrating compared to the overall Kentucky percentages. So not only do higher percentages of students with basic needs insecurities have children, but these students are also more likely to have missed classes because of childcare issues. This table and the remaining ones are now kind of flipped. So now the overall Kentucky comparison is that rectangle column, and we'll compare the other columns to that. This table looks at variables related to perceptions of the institution, including Net Promoter Score, which we'll call NPS in this table. The NPS is a customer satisfaction rating that asks how likely is it that you would recommend your institution to a friend or family on a scale of 0 to 10. I'm sure y'all have taken this in various other surveys. Those who give a 9 or 10 are considered promoters, meaning that they're likely to say positive things about your institutions to others. Those who give 7 or 8 are called passives, and they aren't even on this table. There are people who feel generally neutral, potentially positive, but probably aren't talking up the school to others. And then anyone who gets a 6 or lower is considered a detractor. They have pretty negative feelings about the school, and they can affect the school's reputation. We can see differences between the promoter and detractor groups for most of the distress indicators. Among those who are promoters, fewer of them reported experiencing the distress indicators in general compared to the overall rates in the green triangle or rectangle. And it was the opposite for detractors. More of these respondents reported experiencing distress indicators compared to the overall rates. Also, in that last column, those who felt that faculty understood their financial situation had lower rates of experiencing the various indicators of distress. This table looks at some of the ways students pay for school using grants, student loans, and family support, and also looks at those who received emergency aid from their institution. Slightly higher percentages of students who had received grants and emergency aid had experienced distress indicators, but the percentages were even higher for those with student loans. Starting at the top, 88% of respondents who had borrowed student loans reported experiencing financial difficulties while enrolled, compared to 73% of respondents overall. And 82% of loan borrowers said that they had trouble getting $500 compared to 66% overall. So they're likely engaging in student debt to help them address their low financial situation. So I won't continue all the way down the line, but you can see that loan borrowers are experiencing these distress indicators at higher rates across the board.
Thank you, Jeff. I know that we're kind of toward the end of the meeting, so
Okay.
if you don't mind, I
Sure.
would love to share these slides with everybody. And just then, just as a reminder, this is an open invitation for all campuses, all colleges and universities in Kentucky to administer the Trellis Student Financial Wellness Survey on your campus. Phyllis is going to be sending out more information regarding this opportunity and how you can learn more, and then potentially start the process to be able to administer the survey and then get this really rich data, which I think is one of the biggest pieces to us being able to make the case to upper level administration and other campus stakeholders. We really need to understand how all consuming is this challenge on our campus. How does it impact, our students' promoter score, which I think, obviously if students are, really stressed out about their finances, they can have, and they're not sure that their campus is doing all that they possibly could to support them, that can have a negative influence on their overall satisfaction. So, some really great information available through the Trellis survey. So thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing. And I think that it would be a worthwhile thing to consider, and Phyllis will certainly be reaching out with additional information. The last thing that I just want to share before we wrap up is that we have one more opportunity for our community of practice to get together this kind of academic window, and that's going to be May 23rd. And we have 3 faculty researchers that have been studying student basic needs and the student experience with accessing our services this year, a faculty member from U of L, UK, and Eastern Kentucky University. And they're going to be sharing both their findings and their recommendations that they've learned through student focus groups, website reviews, as well as interviews with program administrators at multiple campuses in the state. So I hope you'll be able to join. I can put the registration link right here in the chat. And of course, I will also include this in our follow-up email. So thank you, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And it's been a great conversation. So hopefully I'll see you in May. Have a good one.